Hello, this is week 5 of environmental ethics. And this week we are turning our attention to some more theoretical aspects regarding environmental ethics and the moral standing of objects in the environment, things other than either living animals or other human beings. In order to get at this, excuse me, we're going to be reading a text from Mark Cockleberg. I've actually given you the entire book of Growing Moral Relations, but we are going to read just the first 3 chapters. That is pages 13 to page 46. So you have the whole book if you're interested in reading the entirety of his writing, but for the purpose of our work, we're going to focus on the first 3 chapters, which really address the question of how do we decide whether something has moral standing or not. In other words, when we look at an entity, we have to decide whether to include them in the community of moral subjects or to exclude them from the community of moral subjects. Traditionally, the environment has been excluded from the community of moral subjects. We know already from our reading of Aldo Leopold that in the history of philosophy, we have made decisions about inclusions and exclusions time and time again. And over time, as Peter Singer shows us, we've expanded the circle of inclusion to draw into the moral community many entities that at one time were considered excluded. So, for example, slaves or women or even animals at various times in our history have been extended some capacity of being a moral subject. Obviously, environmental ethics asks the question whether we can extend moral considerability to natural objects in the environment. And that raises a question about how do we decide these questions? What is the moral theory that we utilize when trying to decide whether something is included or excluded? Cockleberg is going to give us 2 ways of thinking about the sort of theoretical apparatus that is traditionally employed to make these decisions. Traditionally, we have made these decisions on something he calls the properties approach to deciding moral standing. And I won't tell you more about it. I'll just let you know that this is the terminology that he uses, and you'll see in the text the manner by which this traditionally functions. It's really an ontologically based theory. It asks about the criteria in terms of the existence of the object and whether or not it has certain capacities or not. And if it does, it is included. If it doesn't, it's excluded. Obviously, a properties approach to deciding moral standing has some good advantages. It's worked for us for a number of years, and it's worked very well. But there are some problems with the properties approach when we start to approach the natural objects in the environment. As a result of these problems, Cockleberg is going to suggest an alternative for deciding moral standing that he is going to call the social relational approach. The social relational approach is less concerned about ontological properties or capacities, and is more interested in the actual social relationship in which we stand to other things. So this is a kind of Levinasian way of looking at things, that ethics precedes ontology. We first find ourselves in social circumstances where other things are encountered by us, and we need to respond to them in a way that is either responsible or not, depending on whether we account for them as another moral subject or something that can just be utilized however we wish. So what I want us to do this week is to grapple with the question of moral standing and raise questions about how it is we make these decisions, look at the properties approach as one methodology for doing this decision making, and look at the social relational approach, which is Cockleberg's alternative, as a way of opening up a different way of doing moral theorizing, and therefore maybe making room for other kinds of entities and other kinds of others, namely the natural objects in the environment. So that's all I have. Again, I've given you reading questions. I would suggest you look at those questions before doing the reading and then record your responses in your journal or in your notebook and use those questions kind of as a way of guiding your own reading of the material and try to make sense of things by responding to those questions directly. That's all I have. Take care, and we'll see everybody next week. Bye.